welcome to this episode of the Feeding Hour. We're thrilled to welcome Sarah Shugar, a birth and postpartum doula. In this episode, we talk about birth experiences and how they can affect feeding, including cesarean section. We talk about the hurdles that new moms face, especially when breastfeeding, and we talk about safe sleep practices. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on and sharing your knowledge of birth with us. Enjoy. Hey, Abby.
Hi, Catherine. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. I was so excited to see a familiar face as our guest today. This is Sarah Shugar.
Hi.
Hey, Sarah.
She is a birth doula and a postpartum doula and yoga instructor, and she was actually my doula with my second birth. So, love to see you today.
You know, it's so good. And I love that we live so close and we get to see each other often. It's amazing.
Yes. My son has even taken her yoga classes for kids, and I've taken her yoga. So it's great when you can find a doula that you really connect with. And yeah, that's part of why we wanted to have her on the podcast, we've had so many people talk about how their birth experience affects their feeding journey and early feeding days. So we just wanted to pick her brain about birth and kind of postpartum preparation.
Yeah, I'm so excited, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We're so happy to have you. So I'd love to start off, Sarah, with what got you into birth work?
Yeah. I feel like it was kind of this long journey that was going to inevitably take me here. I did my BA in health communication at UNC Charlotte. And that's just such a wide degree. Like, what do you do with a health communications degree after college? And I finished and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Like, I don't want to go to grad school and have debt. And my mom had a fellow colleague who was a part-time doula. And my mom's like, Sarah, you've always loved working with families and nannying, and you're just so good with kids. And I've always been someone who kind of resists the traditional path. Corporate is not for me, like Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I don't do well with being told what to do. So she's like, you should really talk to this woman and just pick her brain. And so I did. And I thought our conversation was so interesting and it piqued my interest, but I don't know, like 21 or 22. So I was like, how am I supposed to help deliver a baby when I still feel like a baby? Like, this is so cool, but I'm just not ready for this yet. So I went off. I lived in Australia some, I lived in New York some. And when I was in New York, I was working as a nanny slash house manager for this Upper East Side family, and just really not in alignment with what I felt like I should be doing with my life. And I knew there's something more out there. Like, I could be doing something more impactful. And I remembered my conversation from years prior with this doula. And so I just started searching, birth doula trainings, Brooklyn, New York. And there was one through Doula International, which is maybe it's the first certifying organization. It's one of the largest ones. Mm-hmm. And there was one coming relatively soon, and it was under $1,000. It's 3 days. So I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. If I don't jive with it, that's okay. It's one weekend. If anything, I'm going to learn a lot, make some friends. And so I did that training February 2020. And so little did I know COVID was about to happen.
Oh my gosh.
And I just fell in love. It was amazing. Like, I learned so much. We were so connected with the women taking the course. And maybe you guys feel the same way about IBCLC, but it just feels like this calling, like you're just drawn to it. Mm-hmm. And then COVID happened, so I couldn't really go into the hospitals or do these things. So it kind of worked out on the back end. I was doing a lot of things to get certified, reading the books and continuing education. And I ended up moving back to North Carolina, where my family is. Just New York and COVID were not a good fit together. Yeah. And I found a mentor. She's been a doula for like 20 years now. And so I got to do like prenatal meetings with her. Eventually, hospitals lessened their restrictions. So I could attend births with her and see how she functioned as a doula and what it looked like to provide physical support or the advocacy or information at the hospital. And it was amazing because I saw births that were, inductions or with an epidural or completely unmedicated, spontaneous. Like I saw everything.
So
And then since 2021, I've been working as a doula, attending births. And I moved to Atlanta January 2024. So I've been doing that full time here, which it's really crazy to see the differences as well between Charlotte births and Atlanta births. The hospitals are different, vibes are different. So yeah, it keeps me busy, it keeps me on my toes, but I love it.
oh my gosh. And would you say you do majority hospital or home birth or birth center or just a mix of all of it?
It's a mix. I've only done one home birth in Georgia so far, a few birth centers, one that was a birth center hospital transfer, and then I would say predominantly hospitals. I love home birth center. Like that's definitely, it feels a little more exciting or like in alignment with my styles. But looking at hospitals, like that is where these women need the most advocacy and support, uh,
Mhm.
especially, the push for inductions and all the interventions. And people sometimes they just don't know, or maybe they do have a vision for birth and they have a really hard time voicing their desires. And so I find that's where women need the most support.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, just like a follow-up to that, what kind of differences did you see between Charlotte and Atlanta? And also, I guess, is there different dispositions in like moms who are having children or yeah, would you go more into that?
Yeah. It was interesting because Charlotte, it's still a city, but it's much smaller than Atlanta. And they have a lot of hospitals, but I
Mhm.
was working primarily with one hospital, Novant Presbyterian. It's like right in the center of Charlotte. They have this amazing midwife group that delivers there. And so it got to this point where I would go onto the floor and the nurses are like, "Hi, Sarah." And they just
Know you.
knew me. Yeah. And it was such this collaborative team environment. It was really doula friendly. Like they were excited to be with you. You were involved in these conversations. I even then I had a mix of moms who were wanting natural or knew they want the epidural. But it just felt really inclusive, like doula friendly, collaborative. Whereas Atlanta, it's huge. And I'm attending births at 10 different hospitals. Like I'll
Yeah.
be at Northside, Piedmont, Emory. Sometimes we're going like further out to like Northside, Forsyth. And
Yeah.
so it's just harder to make these connections with the nurses to where they know you and they respect you and they understand that I'm not just a friend here at the birth trying to like give unsolicited advice. Like
Yeah.
I have education. I know what I'm
Like a
doing.
professional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So for people that might not know, would you just mind like defining the role of a doula and like why someone would want a doula?
Yeah, I love this. Okay, so I think the biggest thing is when a client shows up to the hospital, they're meeting that nurse for the first time in their life. They don't know them. The doctor or midwife on call, maybe they haven't met before, maybe they've only had one or two visits with them. With a doula, I've known you since you hired me, which could have been at week 6 or it could have been like 4 months ago. So there's just this relationship here, this trust that we've built. I am not working for the hospital. I am you are my only interest and and what your
Mhm.
desires are. And so I'm here to advocate for you and not like hospital policy. Um, and it's amazing because when I work with my clients, we have 3 meetings prenatally together. That first one, we're talking about all of their background history. Like Abby, with you, you're telling me all about Jacques' birth. And so I
Yes.
get to understand a lot of your reasons why you want this birth to be different, or maybe where some like fears come into it of not wanting repeats. Um, like NICU, for example, I know that was a big fear for you. Uh,
Yeah.
And then, yeah, prenatal 2, we talk a lot about like, what are your options, especially with a hospital? You know, what can you consent or decline to? Which, by the way, you can decline anything. It is
Exactly.
your body, it's your baby, it's your birth. I always like to remind moms of their autonomy. When we create this birth, I always hesitate to call it a birth plan because, as we know, nothing goes to
It's
plan.
unpredictable. Mm-hmm.
So I'm really big on languaging. So we say birth preferences.
Mm-hmm.
Things may pivot. These are our top preferences. We will try to get some.
Of
Definitely,
these.
we can't
Yeah.
get all of them.
Right.
But I think it helps moms to know, like, the moment I walk into the hospital until after baby is born, these are the things that are going to be offered to me. And maybe these are some things that they're not going to offer me, but they exist at the hospital. So let's know
Yeah.
to ask for them, like nitrous oxide or things like that. And so, yeah, we create this birth preferences. And then prenatal 3, we really get into like movement, positioning, breathing, pushing, a lot of somatic practices. What will we be doing when you're in labor? And even moms with an epidural, I bring a peanut ball and I show them this is what it looks like to have an epidural in bed. We're not going to let you lie there in one position the whole time. I'm going to be moving you, flipping you, keeping, baby moving to get optimal fetal positioning. And so by the time we get to birth, there's just this deep connection and trust there.
Yeah.
And then so once we're in the hospital, a lot of my job is, especially unmedicated, a lot of movement, guidance with positioning, relaxation, massage, breathing. Maybe the doctor comes into the room and suggests something. And so, as a doula, we never make decisions for our clients, and we never give them, I would never say this is what I would do,
Yeah.
but it's about gathering all of the information that they need. So if the doctor is suggesting, um, let's break your waters to speed things along, it's okay. So why? Why do we need to speed things along? What are the risks that come with breaking water? Can we talk about cord prolapse? Can we talk about intensity of, contractions, pain management,
Yes.
all these things? Are there any alternative options? Could we maybe try a pump and get some nipple stimulation? Could we just
Yeah.
try some position changes? Um, what is we call this brain. So benefits, risks, alternatives. What's your intuition say? You know, as a mom,
It's
like,
a
do
great
you
acronym.
feel this is a good decision for you? Uh,
Mhm.
I think as a society, we've lost touch so much with our intuition and trusting ourselves.
Oh
Um,
my God. I was about to say that just I think having a doula, like it's just so helpful because there's so many things that you just would never think about. And that especially if you don't have a medical background, you're like, I have to go enter myself into this like medical system at a vulnerable time when I'm probably not going to be in my right mind. And so it's helpful to already have that trust with someone who like kind of understands the system and can advocate for you, like you said, and like
yeah,
just help you like take a pause and not feel like swept away by this birth
yes.
experience and all these decisions.
I
Like
think
you're like, yeah,
that's the key, taking a pause. I always say, there are situations where there's not a moment and it is a true like emergency or life or death. But
mhm,
in my years of experience, I don't come across those very often. And most of the time, we have a minute. We don't need to give the doctor or the nurse an answer right now.
yeah,
We can take 5 minutes. We could probably take an hour.
yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
What happens in an hour? And birth can change so much in an hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
So much. It's so unpredictable. And then like the last piece of doula care is that postnatal. So I stay, and I do have some questions for you guys, because this is where the feeding aspect comes in. I typically stay 2 hours post delivery as long as everything is normal, because this is when they're transitioning to that postpartum recovery room. And so I
Mhm.
stay with them these 2 hours. We practice feeding and latching, and I make sure they're nice and comfortable. And then I always do follow-up visits in their home as well. And one of the key things we talk about in this postnatal at their home is feeding. And I hear a wide array of how is feeding going.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
Ah,
Wow.
yeah.
You do
Well,
such important work.
yeah, it's beautiful. And I feel like almost every guest that we've had on has said, trust your intuition.
Yeah.
And especially a guest we had on a couple of episodes ago, Emily, we talked about the power of choice and that you always have choice. And yeah, so I just love that you shared that.
Yeah.
And yeah, talking about the postnatal and feeding, just in your experience, I'd love to hear, have you seen the effects of birth and feeding?
Yeah. It's so interesting. Okay, so on one end, I feel like sometimes I've had clients where, looking at three separate journeys. So like birth, pregnancy journey, labor and delivery, and then postpartum and feeding in that. I feel like there's always going to be one of those journeys that are really challenging.
Yes.
And then one that goes really well. So I've had clients who like maybe they have a really easy pregnancy, labor and delivery was just like went completely off the rails, maybe traumatic experiences, and they're really struggling in that postpartum, period emotionally with that. But then feeding has gone well. So I always love like those little wins. But I will say as well, especially moms who end in cesarean, I feel like there has been a harder journey, especially in that initial phase of establishing breastfeeding. So I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say, because certain hospitals like Piedmont, we always ask, we always try to advocate for skin to skin in the OR. And they always say, we just don't have the staff to do that. They really don't give moms the choice. So I always let partners know, like, you can hold the baby to the mom, even like cheek to cheek, like let them smell and touch their babies. They've gone through so much. And then, partners are with the baby in the PACU. Mom is still in, OR getting repaired. And so we're missing that initial period. You know, Oftentimes there's more blood loss, which can also contribute to just like taking a little bit longer to get that milk supply in. There's so many factors in this. So I'm curious to hear from y'all's standpoint, like, what would you say to clients who miss this golden hour, or have this rough beginning to breastfeeding? How do you get that going and build that momentum again?
Oh my gosh, I like love this question. And I know you probably remember with me, like I was so paranoid because of my first birth experience that with my second, I was like, Sarah, like we need to make a plan for every scenario. Like she sent me like options for like hospital transfer, like if it does end up at the birth center, like if we do end in a C-section. And I do think it's helpful to just know, like, because you never think it's going to be you. So I do think
Yeah.
just to say, like, plan, like, what is the rate for C-section? Like I think it's a third of births in America.
I think it's hospital to hospital, but I know some hospitals have as much as like 30-40%.
Yeah. So anyway, and it's like, we have medical intervention for a reason, right? Like if we need a C-section, we need a C-section. Like that's why you want to trust your provider that they will only do it if you really need it, But I could talk about this so much, but to answer your question, I think that cesareans do inherently a lot of times cause more separation because it's a surgery. It's intense. And so, and a lot of times the policy is that you can't hold them. So first I would try to advocate with your doula for like a gentle cesarean. And a lot of people don't even know what that is, but you can look it up online, and it's basically where like you can even see the baby if you want. Like some people might not want that, but you can like see the baby being born, or you hold the baby right after, or at least put them right next to you, or try to do skin to skin while they're like stitching you up. Like there are hospitals and people that have had this experience, and it's really interesting to hear about, and obviously does just help with with bonding and with like that's a reason to get an epidural sometimes if it might go that way, because then you can still be awake during the C-section. So there's things you can do if you think you have more of a chance of getting a C-section. But let's say for whatever reason, like the policy is like you didn't get to see them until like 2 or 3 hours after, and maybe you have to go to the NICU and see them, or maybe whatever, someone, hopefully they didn't give them a bottle already, but something happened where the golden hour is delayed and you've had separation, you can still do skin to skin. You can still do the golden hour just whenever you get them. Like, it's not like, oh, because it's right after birth, it's gone, you know? So still try to do skin to skin, try to have the first latch. Your milk production might take more like the 4 to 5 days when you
Mhm.
have a C-section, just because of, like you said, blood loss and because of the hormone releases that happen during a vaginal birth. So you could expect that your milk might not come in right away, but that still means, as we've talked about on other episodes, like latch them, hand express, like get the colostrum out, pump, like do all the things. And I would say if you have a C-section and you really want to breastfeed, like call that lactation consultant up right away, because just the sooner you can get the milk production going and like making a plan for getting the baby the milk they need in the meantime, if they do need it, then you can kind of get back synced up as soon as you can. So I think it is a situation where sometimes you do need a little more tender loving care to like get back there. But then
Yeah.
in some situations, your milk might still come right in and you latch the baby, no problem. But I just think it's good whenever you've had interventions to like think about how it could affect things, you know?
Yeah. And I think another factor into this is depending what events led up to the cesarean, how the cesarean went, whether you were under general or had a spinal, sometimes after the cesarean, you just don't feel well. And breastfeeding in that first latch, like baby is learning something totally new. They've never done this before. And if you're a first time mom, you've never done this before. Maybe you've never seen a friend do it. Like I always tell my clients, like, you're both on this huge learning curve. Give your baby grace, give yourself grace. But with a normal or physiological vaginal delivery, you have this like boost of adrenaline afterwards. Your baby's wide awake for 2 hours. So you have this energy and this time to really do the skin to skin and to practice latching. Whereas sometimes with that cesarean, you just don't feel well. You feel
Yeah.
so out of it. Maybe you feel like you can't hold your baby. And so I always think that's a factor as well.
Mhm.
But I think like we've kind of heard from other moms as well, just to add to that, is like that it does get easier, thinking about Jacqueline.
Mhm.
And she was like,
She had a
she didn't
C-section.
have a C-section.
She did,
But
I think she did, didn't she?
Is this the last
um,
episode?
Yeah. Do you
yes.
remember?
She did have a
She
cesarean.
did.
Okay, yeah.
She did.
And okay, yeah. And but just being like, no, but this is what I need to do for, the next day or the really the first weeks. And so that kind of goes into postpartum,
Yes.
like, because like yeah, say you do have to have a C-section, but about breastfeeding, that you want to put that baby on your breast as much as possible, to keep your supply, all the things.
Mhm.
And so Sarah, what have you seen in terms of what
Yes.
mom needs postpartum?
Okay. Um, My first question that all moms ask me is like, but my milk hasn't come in. What do I do? Now, okay, let's go over colostrum. It's amazing. And babies' bellies are so tiny. Don't worry about how, like, the quantity that you see. It looks alarmingly small, but the babies' bellies are so tiny. Colostrum is so nutrient dense. So just again, going back to that intuition and trust that your body will produce what your baby needs. And so we always talk about, and Abby, I learned this from your podcast.
Oh,
Anytime the baby is awake, practice latching. Like, don't wait for those hunger cues. And I will tell my clients, crying is a late cue.
good.
Like, baby is awake. They're like turning their head side to side. They're sticking their tongue out their mouth. They're yawning real big. Like, all of these things, practice getting baby on the breast, because the more practice you have, the easier it will become. And the more you're signaling to your body, hey, let's produce milk. And so your milk is going to come in quicker. Something I see my clients struggle with is like, lactation consultants at the hospital don't come around all the time as like quickly as they need. They're not there on the weekend. So what happens if you give birth on a Friday evening? You might leave the hospital before a lactation consultant can see you. So that's always a challenge. So I always offer to my clients, like, if you need help, I can come back to the hospital. I'm not a lactation consultant, but I feel I have a good basic knowledge of breastfeeding and how to latch and that sort of thing. I can at least get them, comfortable and confident until they can see an IBCLC in their home. Uh,
Yes.
and so, yeah, just practicing latching. Once they're home, I feel like a lot of, especially first time moms, just lack that confidence in feeding and knowing maybe they're online a lot and they hear, I should feed my baby every 3 hours. And then by
Uh,
3 hours, the baby's screaming, crying. They're so hungry. And then it's really hard to latch a screaming, crying baby. Uh,
yeah.
and so, yeah, that postnatal visit, it's a lot about breastfeeding is so much work. I'm on the couch all the time. I can never put my baby down. How do I know my baby is getting enough? Like, are they gaining weight? I have moms who will pump so they can measure
You can see it.
and then feed because they don't have that trust in their body to produce enough milk. Um, yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
maybe that's something we should like as a podcast, but also as just a society, like just talk about what it looks like to know that a baby is getting enough milk. Cause I remember that fear so much. And then if you ever are told that your baby is losing weight, then it's like so hard to get over. Like
yeah,
I had a client recently who like the baby's gaining weight fine now. Like I was like, you did the thing. You went to an IBCLC, you addressed the problem, you pumped a little, like you got your supply up, everything's fine. And she's still like, is he gaining? Is he getting enough? Da, da, da. And I'm like we do need to have this trust in our bodies to an extent, and but at the same time have like concrete things to look for, like milk on their nipples or like their arms getting limp after, like things
yeah,
to look for so that we feel like we have this checklist of like, okay, like if all those things are true, if the poop and pee diapers are good, if like if all these things are true, then they are getting enough, and then you can stop freaking out about it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think we live
Which,
so much in our heads now that it's really hard to like look around and see the reality. Like my baby's happy. They're sleeping. They're getting bigger. Yeah, there's, wet diapers, like all of these check signs, and we don't believe
Yeah. Because
which,
it.
like you said, you've never done this before. So you're like, how am I? And we're never, think about it, like in other areas of our life, we're never really told to just do this thing that is so like primal and also just like non-scientific in a way. Like I always say like breastfeeding is like more of an art than a science sometimes.
Yeah, yeah,
well, and that trusting in your body. I mean, talking about prenatal visits, like it starts prenatally, but then it even starts before you conceive. Like to
Mhm.
people who are listening and to myself who haven't conceived a child yet, it's like, but I can start that process of understanding my body now and being
Mhm.
able to kind of build those skills so that I'm not like, this is so foreign, this idea of that I'm producing milk or etc. Um,
yeah. It's so
mm,
interesting. And I do encourage all my clients to seek out a lactation consultant prenatally and have that appointment with them before they give birth. And I know, like, talking of all of these things, you have to, question accessibility and affordability. And
Mhm.
so I would say like, the lactation network, like see
Yes.
if you can find one that's covered under insurance. Books are a great resource. Honestly, like YouTube, a lot of people who are professionals will create videos so you can look at
Mhm.
IBCLC content. Of course, like I always tell my clients, don't just scroll on TikTok and like get all this unsolicited advice, but you can find professionals online. Uh,
Mhm.
and I find people who seek this information and knowledge and connect with professionals beforehand. They have the confidence that they can do it. They have this peace of mind of like, when I'm home, I know who I'm going to call when I need someone. They're not frantically searching when their baby's screaming and they feel like they have a clock ducked and they're in this um, like fight or flight area, and they just have this confidence and then the knowledge of positioning and all of these things. So I do think seeking professional help is invaluable.
ah. Mm.
Great to
Well,
hear.
yeah, we always like kind of close or and our last question is from a perspective of someone who walks with moms prenatally, birth, and postpartum, what advice would you give a mom who's listening and perhaps struggling in her feeding journey?
Yeah. Connect with an IBCLC, talk, if you have a doula, talk to your doula. one of the biggest things I see is, I'm at the birth, maybe they latch, but I'm really only there for maybe that first feeding. And then we have a lot of, text communication or phone calls. And they're like, yeah, I'm doing great. Like, I'm tired, but just like general things. And then I get to their home maybe a week later, sometimes 2 weeks later for that postnatal, and I see, oh, wow, they're really struggling. They've
Yeah.
been here for 2 weeks. They're in pain. The baby's not happy. Like, they're not sleeping well. Baby's not sleeping well. Like, they've just been really struggling. And man, I wish they would have reached out to me. Like, I would have connected them with resources. I would have gotten here sooner. And I think a lot of moms feel this shame around asking for support. And we don't live in a society where it's this village community or intergeneration or multi-generational households. And so they're alone. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really hard. And so I see a lot of the times, like when I'm at that postnatal, like, reach out for support
Yeah.
before it gets
You're
bad.
making the referral kind of.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you're like, why didn't you say it sooner? So maybe it's too like just telling new moms when they're pregnant, if they are getting a doula, like, look, you're
Yeah.
really preparing for this birth. Like, let's just make sure that you know when to ask for help for the next phase too, because it's not supposed to be easy and like that it all is figured out
Yeah.
within a week. Like usually most people are struggling the first week. So it helps to know that you have support coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so interesting because on my intake form, which is when they hire me as a doula, the first thing I send them, one of the questions on there is, how do you intend to feed your baby? And like, do you have any concerns around feeding, that sort of thing? And I would say 90% of my clients intend on breastfeeding, whether that's exclusive breastfeeding or combo feeding.
Yeah.
I do have some clients for different reasons that decide for their body they want to exclusively either pump or do formula, which is fine. Everyone has different journeys. Um, but Abby, you said on one of your episodes there's a statistic of moms.
83% or something, which that lines up. Like,
Yeah, and
yeah,
then what is 30%, however many months
at
later?
6 months, I think only
Yeah.
like 30% are meeting their goals.
Yeah.
So are exclusively breastfeeding. So
And
it's
I
like
see that
obviously these
out.
people want to do it. It's just there's some gap that's
Yeah.
happening, you know?
And I see it's very quickly, like maybe 2 weeks or a month, they say, oh, I just switched to formula and I feel so much better. I feel like I have more freedom. And because it is so challenging, and maybe because they didn't have that support and that expectation of breastfeeding is a full-time job. This is what we're going to be doing. And so, we see online like these moms conquering it all, and they have the newborns and the toddlers, and they're just like holding their baby feeding. And it's not always our reality. We can't have that expectation for ourselves. And so I do see that rapid decline. Uh,
Yeah. And like you said, like if you could just know that if you do want to do it, so you see some benefit in it, then it's like, okay, if you just know that it's going to be hard, like for that first month, it might be hard. You might have some hiccups to work through, but it's not going to stay that hard. Like
Yeah.
Jacqueline said on our episode, like, it is probably by like 2, 3 months and definitely by like 5, 6 months, it gets so infinitely easier each month. So like you probably, if you can stick it out for that phase
yeah.
and not just stick it out while it's hard, but like be addressing the issues and
Yeah.
then we can help you get through it.
And pain is something, and I always tell my clients, whether this is pregnancy or feeding, like pain is common, but it's not normal. So let's not just power through this. Let's figure out, is it the latch? Is it the positioning? Like something's going on. It shouldn't be painful.
Right.
Well, and I love what you said, Sarah, before we started recording, that moms that have these birth plans or birth preferences,
Yeah.
and having a postpartum plan as well. Like, why would you not have a postpartum plan? So I feel like that is a huge takeaway.
Yeah.
I remember feeling like I don't know how to make a postpartum plan because I don't even know what it's going to be like to having a baby. And so then the second time I was like, oh, I'm making this postpartum plan. Like I've
Yeah.
got it. But I do think but we obviously make a birth plan without knowing how to
Give
have a
birth.
baby.
Yeah.
So maybe maybe that's something too, is just getting comfortable with like, what is a normal baby like? Because I remember having my first, I didn't realize, I knew baby slept a lot, but I didn't realize like just how often the feeding and the sleeping happens. Like it's very quickly, and then it changes like in like a month, then they start doing a little bit less nap, a little bit more efficient feeding, like, but just knowing like what are babies really doing all day, what's normal, is kind of helpful.
And I create resource folders for all of my
Cool.
clients. In
Loved
there,
those.
oh my gosh,
My husband loved them. Rudy was like on there just
loved it. I showed up to the birth, and Rudy has like, I have this page of different like positionings and things for someone to be doing while they're in labor. And Rudy had it on his phone, and he's like looking at it, and he's helping Abby. And I was like, this
Wait,
is
so that's
so
a plug. That's a plug. Is a doula is really good for the partner because it helps them feel empowered, because a lot of times the partner is like, oh, I also have never had a baby before. So
Yeah.
this is helpful to just know how to support your partner, your birthing person.
Yeah.
I
If
always
it's not
wonder,
obvious, Rudy is Abby's husband.
yeah. I always wonder, like, do people use these resource folders? And so seeing them
You
use it,
do.
I loved it.
That's
I
amazing.
always do postpartum plans in there. Some of them are like interactive online ones where you can go through and click and, choose like, who am I allowing in my home? Like, what is the visitor situation? Who's doing the grocery shopping? Where are meals? Are people dropping them off? Because like you said, like breastfeeding is around the clock full-time job. You're not the one. If you were the one who traditionally did the grocery shopping and meal prep, you're not doing that right now. You're recovering from birth. Ideally, you're in bed or on the sofa. Someone's bringing you food. They're bringing you tea. We talk a lot about galactagogues, like foods that are, like good for producing milk, and teas that are good for that. And so your job as the birthing person is to feed the baby and hold the baby. And so your postpartum plan is really who's doing everything else that needs to get done and assisting me in my recovery and feeding journey.
And it's not selfish. It's like actually the best thing you can do for you and your baby. Like you probably know this more than me, but I've heard that, or I've like read before that there's so many other cultures that do like 40 days or do a long time, and they see that like how you recover postpartum like has effects for the woman's life, like throughout their life.
Baby's life as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the period and like just meeting the baby's needs. And I have clients where they're like, oh, my baby wants to be held all the time and I can't do anything. And I'm like, you held your baby for 10 months in your womb, and they're out in this world that's like bright and cold and loud. Of course, they want to be on you. They want to feel your heartbeat. They want to feel you breathing and feel your warmth. And so I love to teach clients baby wearing, because like you can get things done. You can have two hands and your baby feels safe. And it's co-regulation. I have clients who will co-sleep and they're like, I actually sleep better and my baby sleeps better. And so then we talk about, safe sleep, because looking across at other cultures,
Yes.
everyone's co-sleeping.
I love that you talk about this with the new moms. I do too. And I think we're going to have a sleep consultant on soon that wants to talk about that too. Just because like, I think now it's still at the pediatrician. Everyone's like, don't close sleep. Like, and I totally think, there's ways to be safe about it. There's the safe sleep 7, but it's such an important topic to not just be like, don't co-sleep at all, because the statistics on that too are like parents will end up co-sleeping just because you're sleep deprived. And that's way more dangerous if you don't have like the safe plan for it.
You don't know all of the rules and the setup for safe sleep. Yeah.
And it's like kind of ethnocentric to be like, oh, well, in the United States, we don't co-sleep because we're smarter. It's like, okay, people have been co-sleeping for
many, many years. Yeah. Oh my God.
Awesome.
Oh, well, I hear a little Remy. She is ready for me to be done. But this has been such a good conversation, Sarah. I feel like I'm so glad that we just heard your perspective. And I just think birth is such an important topic. And like you said, the postpartum piece.
Yeah.
just
Thank you
invest.
Yeah.
for having me on. Abby, I would love to do an episode because you've been doing birth stories where it's your birth story.
I know. We did one story where we kind of went into it, but you're right. I should really
Do a
like,
full episode, like dive deep.
okay. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, maybe we'll get that
It
on the
was
book.
so beautiful. So
Oh, thank you.
we're
Yes,
Awesome.
I loved it.
I
Well, I
love
wouldn't
it.
have had the birth I had without Sarah, everyone. She stuck with me for
yeah.
41 weeks. Finally had her. It was great.
Awesome.
And she
Well,
was a big, beautiful baby.
She was
gorgeous girl.
over 9 pounds. She
Yeah.
was very squished in there, but somehow Sarah helped me to have a vaginal birth.
You
I
had
don't
no
know.
tears.
It was
Beautiful.
amazing.
Wild. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I really did
Listen.
think though during that moment, I was like, I am not like I'm gonna have to have a C-section. Like this baby will not fit through. Like I just know. And like I just had that thought. And then Sarah was like, well, you're doing it now. So just do it.
Abby said, I can feel my hips separating. Like
I could.
the bones moving. I was like, yeah, probably you can because you're unmedicated.
Oh,
Yeah.
crazy. But
Yeah.
That's
great
awesome.
experience.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your just birth wisdom with us. We so
Yeah.
appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to share, like
Yes,
where
where
people
people
can find you?
Oh, I don't use social media really business wise, but I have a website, sarahshugardoula.com. Sugar is SHUGAR. You can plug that in your show notes or something. Email is info@sarahshugardoula.com. So yeah, look me up. I'd love to support you.
Awesome.
I currently teach just a vinyasa style yoga, but I am doing my prenatal yoga teacher training this fall in Atlanta. So hopefully I can offer that to clients soon as well.
We need more prenatal teachers in Atlanta. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yes.
I know. I'm really excited for that.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. We so appreciate it.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Abby. This was so great.
Oh, thanks for being here. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you are interested in learning more about attachment feeding or have any feedback for us at all, please email us at thefeedinghourpodcast@gmail.com. You can also sign up for our email list in the link in the show notes to be the first to know when a new episode is released. See you next time, and happy feeding.